Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Still working on the technology. This is what I call my mid-range production. We can't use the top range yet because of the difficulty transferring it, but I think this will be good enough in order to pass on the content. Welcome everyone. This is a subject I've already touched at several different occasions, but I'm trying to get it as clear as possible so people will understand what I'm trying to get at. Many people don't seem to be able to relate to this, although it's a vital question, i.e. the question of enlightenment and what its role is in life and on the spiritual path. Now, we have two kind of polarities here. One polarity, two poles, and that is the pole of the people of enlightenment who believe that the only valid goal for mankind is to try to attain enlightenment. And then we have the people, the jurists, if you want, the people who are people of rule of law, in this case religious law, and they think all that's important is to follow the law as given by God, and everything will be okay from there without actually seeking to know who the lawgiver is. Okay, so these are if you want, the two extremes, and we are trying to get to a position of balance. Okay, first of all, why do I address this question? This has to do with the whole phenomenon in the West of people seeking enlightenment. We can trace it back very far to the Theosophists, and probably the best known personality in this area originally was Krishnamurti. Since then, we have had many others. Excuse me if I have to look down because we have to be careful not to go over time here. Krishnamurti was one of the original Illuminati, and most recently we've had people like Eckhart Tolle and Adyashanti and many others, Muji, who are trying to teach us that only that we can get to enlightenment in a relatively simple way, that we don't need religion, and that getting to this state of peace, being in the present, being connected with the Absolute is a sufficient goal. If anyone wants to pursue this angle more, then they can look at some of the videos done on batgap.com by Rick Archer, who's an excellent interviewer. That's batgap.com, and you'll be able to see a host of over 300 different people, all who claim various states of enlightenment and what they're trying to teach. Okay, so when I first got involved in Islamic Sufism, this is 1978, the first page of the first teaching I received said the following: this way is based on walking on two legs. The leg of Hakika, which is the absolute truth, and the leg of Sharia, which is the relative truth. Now, don't misunderstand the term Sharia, because it's been bandied around a lot and used almost as an equivalent of fanaticism, but we're using Sharia in the sense of the relative reality. So this teaching meant it's important, yes, to arrive at what would be called Islamically the secret, the seer, but it's also important to get your relative being in order, and especially the relationship between the relative and the absolute, i.e., the relationship between the small self and the big self, or again, the relationship between man and obviously woman and God. Okay, that part of the equation is important. Otherwise, you fall into what the Muslim theologians call the heresy of batiniya, of being excessively preoccupied with the inner without taking care of the outer. Now, all of this may seem somewhat obscure, but actually it has a lot of practical consequences. Why? Because if we think that the only purpose is attaining enlightenment, and we can attain it without any specific religious practice, then we reject religion, i.e., we reject what the majority of mankind has been doing since the beginning of time, and even in the contemporary world, there are literally billions of people practicing their religion. So if we're on this enlightenment track, if we're one of the Illuminati, as they call them, then we evacuate any importance to the practice of religion, which I think is a serious mistake and a serious imbalance. The second reason that this is important is that we also, at the same time, discard relative reality. So that, for example, if you read amongst the Buddhists, in the Buddhist literature, the idea is to attain non-self, that the self is not a reality. The only purpose is to go beyond the self, dissolve the self into the absolute, regardless of what term we use for that process, satori, samadhi, many nibbana, fana in Islam, and that's the only purpose. The relative self has no real existence, has no real purpose. This flies in the face of a very important reality that the creation itself had a purpose. Now, what is this purpose? Islamically, we're taught that man was created to worship God or to serve God. That's one purpose. There's also sayings of the Sufis that Allah says, I was a hidden treasure that wanted to be known, and so I created the creation so that I would be known. Or also, I created the creation so that I could see myself in its image. But the bottom line here is that creation is purposeful. If we think that the only purpose of the spiritual path is to dissolve the self in the absolute and disappear forever, something called liberation, then there's no purpose to creation. It's all absurd. And that really doesn't make any sense. That's almost like saying God, the creator, made a huge mistake and never should have made this creation in the first place, because the only purpose of it is to get rid of it. So people will ask me from here, what do we do? What do I recommend? And my answer is simple. I recommend a twofold path, as I started with. I recommend that we practice our religion carefully, that we try to develop our piety, our sanctity, the holiness around us, and at the same time we follow the mystical path to arrive at the secret, to arrive at the essence of the universe, which is the essence of ourself, which is the essence of God. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, salamun mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. And we ask for divine guidance in everything, because we are weak and we are ignorant. He is all powerful and He is all knowing. Al-Fatiha. Amin. Amin.